welcome to It Is What It Is. I'm Shaw Marie, and it's been forever, and we are finally back. So, we're back. You guys, it's insane. So this is episode 80 and my 18th solo. Super crazy. And today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you guys about a sweet little documentary movie on Amazon that I watched. And always when it comes to the Amazon Prime, I have to thank my brother-in-law Dallas for letting me mooch off of his. So I watched this movie and it's called Death of a Child. And on this hour and 20 minutes, you'll hear the stories of four sweet innocent babies. And so I'm going to tell you their stories. And the only reason why I picked this is because the world right now is so crazy, and each and every one of us have 1,000,005 things going on in our heads at any given point right now. And so these stories I'm going to tell you are just a little bit something to remember, because when your mind is distracted and you have all these things going on, sometimes accidents slip in. And the four stories I'm going to tell you about are complete and utter accidents. And I don't know. I just feel like maybe this is just something that I should do, I guess. And so it just touched me deeply. And so I just want to tell you guys about their stories and just remind you to keep the motto of this is to look before you lock. And so I just want everybody to remember that. And we'll go through it. As I go through these stories, I'll say this 1,000,000 more times. So just remember, look before you lock. And you can look at all the stories and everything I'm telling you. I'll tell you which stories I got from this website and which ones I didn't. And it is kidsandcars.org for any more information and how to contribute or anything like that. You guys can find on their website. Okay. So to start off is Kristen. She was the daughter of Pastor Doug, and her mom's name is Diana, not Donna, Diana. And she was born on October 1st, 2000. And on August 3rd of 2004, Doug got his children ready and put his children in the car. His son Dayton and his daughter Christine. Dayton went to a different daycare facility than his sister did. So he was dropped off, and then father and daughter went off to the church. He worked there the whole day, his 6 to 7 hours. Later on in the day, his wife calls him, and she says she's going to pick up the kids. And so he tells her to come and get him, and then they will all go. I believe it's to get lunch together or something like that. And so when the wife gets there, they go to the church daycare, and he says he's looking at the list and he doesn't see her name on like the check-in side. And he's pondering for a minute, like, how is her name not on here? And then it dawns on him. He'd never checked her in. So he leaves and he runs to the parking lot. He slides the door open where her car seat sits. Her car seat is empty. And then that's when him and his wife realize that she's not in her car seat. She's laying in the back of their vehicle. She had pulled her toys out and was playing with her toys. And so she had passed away in the back of the vehicle. Her mom grabs her, holds her, and just sits there and says, "Mommy's here, Mommy's here." when they take her to the paramedic with the paramedics and everything, they go to the hospital, and the mom said that they were working. She knew in her heart that her baby was gone, and that like they were just so aggressive and so hard trying to bring this baby back. But her temperature, I think the nurse told her mom it was like 107, and that there was just no way that they were going to be able to bring this sweet little baby back. She's 3.5 years old. So they just couldn't even imagine that situation. And so her dad was charged, and his trial started in December. His sentencing was in March. And normally when the judge sentences you, it's here's your sentence, adios, see you, have a good day. This judge went on for 20 minutes on this man's behalf and spoke on this man's behalf for 20 minutes on how you cannot blame yourself when things like this happen, and that he is already being punished to the fullest extent, knowing that his actions are what caused his baby girl to pass. And even in the marriage, like, he didn't understand how his wife didn't hate him, and that she said she knew in her heart of hearts that this was just a complete utter accident. And so the judge gives him 20 hours of community service, and he tells him mainly he's doing this so that, for one, he gets out of bed in the morning and he has something to do, and for two, because he needs to be in society. He needs to be out in his community. And so it was just so precious and so telling, because like his community really stood behind him, his church community. Everyone knew that this was truly just a complete and utter mistake, accident, just horrible. Everybody knew. So their son, the mom tells it's cute. It's cute. It's sad, but it's precious. The mom tells the story on how after their daughter passed away, they kind of pushed their son Dayton to the side, and they kind of pushed him away. And that friends and family loved him and cared for him and brought him up. And that they were all at a gathering this one time, and Dayton is crying and he's inconsolable. He's just crying. And finally, one of her friends looks at her and says he wants his mommy. Like, he doesn't want us. He wants his mom. And that kind of snapped her back into like, I'm still a mom mode. And they took their son home that night. And then later on, they had another little boy. So now they have 3 children. And dude, this poor man was afraid to be alone with his children, in fear of messing up and having to live with that constant doubt. When you become a parent, first time parent, you're scared shitless, utterly fucking shitless. And so and this is, his son was older. I believe so. And so, like, I don't know, having 2 children at the time, and like, just, it breaks my heart. And so that's her story. So she's first in the movie. You'll hear about her first. And during the whole movie, they go back and forth between all 4 of these families. Well, the 4th family, he comes in at the very end, but you'll understand why he does when I tell you his story. Okay, so this story is off of the website kidsandcars.org. She's also in the show, but she also wrote her story on that website, because that website, you can go and look at the stories of like what happened that day. So I'm just going to read you exactly what... Oh no, this is the grandfather. Sorry, the second one is from a grandfather, not the parents. But I'm just going to read you what his grandpa wrote on his behalf, and then tell you kind of the notes from the show I watched, because I also took my own individual notes. So this story is about sweet little Norman Lee Van Collins III, aka Bishop. He was born February 17th, 2011, and he passed away on May 29th, 2011. His grandfather writes, "The morning of Sunday, May 29th, 2011, was a beautiful, warm, sunny day in Jackson, Mississippi, where I reside. My son Norman II and his family also live in Jackson, but traveled 2.5 hours north each weekend to Clarksdale, where he was the minister of music at their local church. His grandson, Norman Lee Van Collins III, was 3 months and 12 days of age. He says, my grandson was a wonderful baby with beautiful brown eyes, soft curly hair. Oh man. He often smiled and cooed in such a way that it would melt your heart for anyone who met him. As a grandfather, I celebrate him every day. Since I was the 7th born of 7 children and the father of 7 children, I felt a special connection to little Norman because he was also the 7th grandchild to be born into the Collin clan. My son later informed me that he would be nicknaming him Bishop to celebrate their legacy, their family legacy, and had been expressed to me as a pastor and my son as a musical in the musical church. Like most grandparents, I could hardly go to the store without remembering to buy an outfit, a toy, or another item to share with Bishop. I even bought items of clothing for both of us that would identify us as father and grandson, like a perfect little suit and tie. My home became a little nursery. I was privileged to babysit him for days while his mother and father either were at work or at church functions or out of town, or simply because I loved to be with him. Since it was the day before Memorial Day, impatiently waited for my son and his family to return from Clarksdale later that evening, and prepare food for the holidays at my home. And I and a close friend were headed out of town for a brief visit when I received a phone call from a church friend. He told me that my son, Norman II, needed me to come to Clarksdale, Mississippi, right away, that something had happened to Bishop. After several more frantic phone calls, I eventually received word that our dear little Bishop was dead. Grief-stricken and confused, all I could remember was the pain in my heart, not felt since I witnessed the death of my mother 10 years earlier. The 2.5-hour drive to see my grieving family seemed like eternity. When we finally arrived in Clarksdale, I found them huddled at the local hospital. The pain was uncompounded by the agony of seeing my son and his wife grieving as they fell into my arms on the hospital porch, surrounded by church members, family, and sympathizers. After sharing a few moments of uncontrollable emotions, my son and his wife began to share with me the horrible details of what happened that day. He, his wife, and his daughter and Bishop arrived late that morning to church. When they arrived at church, his wife and his daughter entered the church. Meanwhile, Norman was left to remove Bishop and his musical equipment from the vehicle. Norman saw one of the church members who came to assist him on the ceremonies on Sunday, and requested that member to remove Bishop from the car and take him to the nursery for him. Thinking and being assured the member heard him, he proceeded into the church and set up his keyboard and began to worship. But unfortunately, that member did not hear him. While in church, services were going on and proceeding for the next 2.5 hours. Bishop was left in the vehicle parking lot, in the parking lot of the church, with the windows up in 93-degree weather, still buckled into his car seat. When the church services concluded, Norman proceeded to the nursery to get Bishop, where he wasn't there. Norman's wife and himself and other members rushed to the vehicle to find Bishop unresponsive. At that point, he was rushed to the local hospital and pronounced dead on arrival. Needless to say, the result of this tragedy, our lives have not been the same. As daily our hearts struggle to deal with the loss of our beloved Bishop. However, in efforts to prevent children and other children and families from enduring such a horrible experience, we have begun an annual campaign called Bishop's Blessing, where we share our stories and is our indeterminate materials regarding children, hot cars, tragedies in churches, while being at churches and organizations, the social and news media, in bringing awareness and hopefully prevention of children being left in hot cars. And you can go to iamnormancollins.com/bishops-blessings-. Bishop's death was tragic and unintentional. It was the result of communication and misunderstanding between two people, and all of it would have been preventable. These have been experiences and tragedies, and you have to experience the unknown, and the unthinkable can happen. So this is why it is important to educate communities at large gatherings about children in hot cars and death. Prior to Bishop's death, I actually either never heard of such tragedy or had fell onto deaf ears. However, it hits home. You bring to understanding what it could happen. It could happen, and it could happen to anyone, regardless of race, social status, or gender. For equal importance, it is to share this experience. Other families have already lost loved ones due to hot car deaths, and they mean and need support and strength. As I and my son's family personally have expressed, it is difficult to bear such a burden without others who sympathize and empathize for the loss and the ongoing grief. For that reason, I pledge my support to those families with the hope that we can turn our pain into power. I have so many times taught so many times on the effects and valuables and the frequent message and methods on what it would have been towards saving Bishop. Yet I realize that in spite of all the hurt and the pain, we all have a God-given right, responsibility, and reason to protect our children as well as each other in many ways, as any way possible. While we cannot change what happened to our precious Bishop, as advocates, as parents, as teachers, as resources and media, we can and must do something to help. We can do it, and we will do it. Signed, the grandfather, Norman Lee Van Sr., PhD. So, when his dad tells his story on the movie, in the documentary, I never heard the talking to another person at the church. So what his dad says is that morning him and his wife had been arguing with each other, and the drive is obviously 2.5 hours. They were running behind, so he was in a bad mood, she was in a bad mood, and that normally he would open the car door for her, let her out. But this day, when they got to the church, everybody's emotions were so over the place that she let herself out, and the daughter got out, and he grabbed his music stuff and he got out. And they went into the church, and him and his wife made eye contact with each other the whole time, trying to like determine whether their fight was over or not. And so they finally, church ends, and then that's when she goes to get the baby, and the baby's not there. And then it clicks. And so after he passes away, it's so hard for these people. And it's so amazing that they made it through it. Because he just said, like, he was not happy. Like, he started looking throughout the like outside of the marriage at like other women, especially women who didn't have children, that didn't know that connection, and that him and his wife were afraid to be with each other in fear of getting pregnant and this happening to them again. And I mean, you already have one daughter, and now this happens, and you want to just blame each other because, I mean, I could have grabbed him. You know what I mean? Like, they're in this horrible, hard situation. And they almost lost their marriage. I think he says that they've been married for 6 years and only 2 years of it have been happy, which is horrible when you think about it. And especially when your child passes and as the result of an argument between you and your spouse. I could only imagine. So they did end up having 2 more children. When their other son was born, they didn't leave both of their sons. When they were born, they wouldn't leave or take them outside until they were past 3 months old, so that they would at least live longer than Bishop did. And it's just, I can't even imagine, you guys, like, this stuff hits me so hard because it's just so sad. So sad. So, just a rememberment. I don't even know if that's a fucking word. But remember, I'm going to say it again, look before you lock. By the time we get this episode over, y'all are going to fucking have that shit ingrained into y'all. Okay, so this next one is so heartbreaking. They're all heartbreaking. But this one, like, her other child was older at the time of this incident. So, and he speaks on the show. And so you get to hear the horribleness that he went through because of other children and being bullied and whatnot. So this is the story of Bryce Belfour. He was born on June 20th, 2006, and he passed away March 30th of 2007. He was 9 months old. He was 9 months and 10 days old. And this is his mom's letter. So this is a first-hand account of what happened on the day of Bryce's passing. She says, "When I opened the door and saw my son Bryce not moving, not breathing, as the world as I knew it would never be the same. On March 30th, 2007, I had to kiss Bryce goodbye and accept the devastating reality that I had killed my son. I had killed him, my own son. It was an accident, and it couldn't have been possibly fathomable that I would be responsible for it, for which I learned later on was very much preventable. Here is our story. On that fateful morning, Bryce was super tired. Jarrett and I both were. Bryce had a bad cold and was restless and coughing all week. But that Friday morning, he was especially lethargic because he had been up all night coughing stuff up and miserable. I was exhausted. Long days at work, along with sleepless nights. I was severely sleep deprived. But as Jarrett shook me for a second time to tell me it was my time to get up, I finally just said in my mind, if I can make it through today, I can rest this weekend. As Jarrett got Bryce ready for the day, he dressed him warmly, as it was March and it had been pretty cold that morning in Virginia. Garrett and I had a crazy week. My sister had been borrowing his car because hers was in the shop. I had been dropping him off and then Bryce, which was out of her normal routine. When he brought Bryce downstairs, he looked tired and sleepy. I can't remember if I kissed him that morning. It is a memory that I regret every day. As we were about to leave our home, Jarrett asked when we were going to get Bryce's new car seat put in by the fire department. I retaliated and said I would do it at lunch if I had time. But after work, definitely. He took the car seat out of the car, and later I would realize that he had put the car seat where Bryce normally would be strapped in, beside the passenger seat. And on this particular day, he put him behind me, behind the driver's seat. Now, it is important to note, for routine's sake, on my way home from work on Wednesdays, I would pick up Bryce and arrive at home realizing I hadn't picked up Garrett, simply because it's a change in my routine. As I got into the vehicle, he had already strapped Bryce into the seat, and neither one of us remember who put the diaper bag behind me on the floorboard as we started off that day. Normally, the diaper bag would be up front in the passenger seat, along with my purse, so I wouldn't forget to drop it off at Bryce at the babysitter's house. But that week, her husband had moved it into another place in the car. Because of his size, it was uncomfortable to keep them on the floorboard in front of him. As we drove off to start our workday, we didn't remember hearing Bryce cooing and laughing in the back, which was not surprising since he had such a restless night. When I dropped him off at work, he kissed me and said goodbye. As I drove off to work myself, I received a call from my nephew. We talked for several minutes. I was concerned about him and he wanted to talk to me to make sure he was doing okay. While on the phone with him, I received an urgent call from my work. One of my colleagues complaining about the fighting something. Oh, the flight arrangements had not been paid for, and that we were honoring a fallen soldier. And the contribution was the soldier's family wouldn't arrive in time. Oh, sorry. The concern was that the fallen soldier's family wouldn't arrive in time for the ceremony the next day. Sorry, this is a military family. I should have said that from the beginning. Both mom and dad in the military in this family. As a transport officer, it was my job to fix those kind of problems. And we had a short time to handle the problem. I began to think on how we could solve the problem as I drove right past the turn where I would to drop off Bryce. You see, I would later understand that in my mind, I made that stop already, as my normal reminders of Bryce in the rear passenger seat in the diaper bag are memory triggers for a normal day. Like, it's not there, car seat's not there, so she thinks she's having a normal day. So, to make matters worse, I had an empty car seat. Oh my God. And I had an empty car seat in my field of view the whole time, where Bryce quietly slept behind me, not making a sound. When I arrived at work, I jumped out. I hurried into work without another thought, except to get the flight issue fixed. It was only 39 degrees when we left the house, and the high that day reached 66 degrees. But as I would find out later, that would still have been deadly. After solving the emergency and solving the flight for the soldier's family, I went about my normal day at work. I answered calls on my work phone and work cell phone as I normally left my personal cell phone in my purse. People close to me knew to call the work cell phone if they really needed to get in contact with me. Around 2 p.m., I picked up my personal cell phone to get a number out of it and saw I missed a missed call. It was Whitney, the sitter's new number. So I called her and I got her voicemail. I left her a message as I started to leave work, exactly excited that we all had been let out an hour early, 4:05 to be exact. I get a call from Whitney. She asked me how Bryce was doing. I said I wasn't sure. He was with her. And she said, "No, he isn't here." Not realizing that Garrett didn't have the car, I asked her if Garrett had picked him up. Whitney paused. "No, Lynn, you didn't drop him off this morning." As she said it for the second time, it began to sink in. She was saying, I had forgotten to drop him off. As I drop everything and race to the car, my mind is racing back to that morning, and I can honestly remember dropping him off. It was impossible that he was still going to be in the car. As I began to open the door, I could see my little baby, motionless, and I was pretty sure not breathing. My heart literally stopped beating. I began to scream. I immediately unstrapped him and started CPR. As I see friends start to call 911, I started crying. As I blow breath into his mouth, my baby to start breathing and praying that I'm not too late. When the ambulance arrived, we rushed to the hospital. I am in shock. I am overcome in grief and disbelief that this cannot be happening to me. I cannot be that type of mother who would accidentally forget her child. When the doctor came in and tells me that they are working on my precious little boy and it doesn't look good, I collapse to the ground and start screaming and praying to God to take my life and let him live. Let me take his place. Another few moments pass, which seems like eternity. And when the doctors return, I can see on their faces, my 9-month, 10-day-old son was dead. I don't really remember much after that, only to recall the look on my husband's face when he came into the room and a friend told him that our son had died and that he had been forgotten in the car. Now I can tell you that I hope someday that the horrible memories of that day are replaced and filled with happy new ones. I have his laugh, his infectious smile, and the unconditional love he shined upon us every day. But for now, I seem to live with the heart and the pain and the nevertheless and the ever-present with a cold, stiff blanket surrounding me. I will never forget my promise to Bryce as I coddled him quietly with tears running down my face as I kissed his cold cheek over and over in the hospital room. That I would educate other parents. I would educate other parents on the dangers of hypothermia and how it is absolutely possible to accidentally forget your child, because no parent should ever feel the way that I do. God bless you, Bryce. Mommy misses you, and this is for you. Okay. You stop crying. I'm not crying. You're crying. You stop. Anyway, she was charged as the other parents were. Oh, and Bishop's dad's charges were dropped. I have to mention that too. Sorry. She was also charged, and she spent $126,000 in lawyers and and court costs and everything. Her husband was deployed shortly after overseas, so she was alone, going through this with her son at the time, who was in 8th grade. And so it took 6 months of court time and 90 minutes for a jury to find her not guilty. So when she found out that she was going to be charged, it was the day of her son's funeral. And they were charging her the day after her son's funeral, when cops were present at his funeral to determine her response to his death. So this mother was judged from the very beginning. And what saved her is one of the jury foreman openly admitted that he almost once forgot his child in the car. So that really is ultimately what saved her in the end. Her son at the time, well, like I said, was in 8th grade. At the time of this show, he was 23. He went through hell. People mad at him for supporting his mom, calling his mom a baby killer, asking how he can love and care for his mom since she killed his brother. And her son did really good in school and really good morally just in general. And he says the reason why is because he didn't want anybody to look at his mom and say that she was a bad mom. Because he knows she's not a bad mom and that it was an accident. And that she was being judged on a complete accident. So she has 4 other children since Bryce has passed away. And she says that just the feeling to know that you're not a good parent and like that you judge everything, you don't trust yourself. You're constantly afraid that it's going to happen to you again and that you're going to be responsible for the worst thing ever happening to your child, and that's your child losing their life. So they end by sending Bryce letters. The 4 younger siblings, they all send Bryce a letter to heaven on balloons and everything else. So yeah, I cried a lot on that too. So bear with me, you guys. Stop crying. You're fine. I promise. You're fine. The last one I'm going to tell you about is extremely sad for me. So, and I'll tell you why it's extremely sad. It's just absolutely horrible. Okay. So I got this one from the news article, a news article, because they are not on the website. Okay. That terrible morning, Antonio Belta dropped off his girlfriend, Michelle, at her work, where she worked as a waitress, and he is a horse groomer at a horse racing track. The couple planned to drive north as soon as she had finished her shift. They'd be in New York with their family in a day or two. He is a 27-year-old Peruvian immigrant. He tells his girlfriend not to worry, that he would take care of all the last-minute errands. As she got out of the car, she kissed him and said goodbye to their 9-month-old daughter, Veronica. Once alone with the baby, he starts checking off his chores, okay? He goes and he washes the car. He says goodbye to the landlord. He loads the couple's belongings into the vehicle. Belongings, dishes. This is what he's loading in. He does the dishes, baby clothes, photos, into the 1996 Pontiac Grand Prix. He goes to the gas station. He fills up the tank. He buys a bag of Fritos. He buys 2 Rockstar coffee drinks, and he gets on the road. When he returns to the Gulfstream parking lot around 1 p.m. that spring day on March 13th, 2004, it was 65 degrees outside. Cool enough that many of the race fans were just wearing light jackets. He calls Michelle on her cell phone and lets her know everything was ready to go, and she would be off around 5. That they would head straight for the state line. She asked what he had planned to do until then. He tells her that he needs to talk to his boss for a minute to make sure his transfer goes smoothly. She warns him not to leave the baby in the car. But he had taken her inside twice before, inside to the track, and it was loud, the flashing slot machines, and the crowd made her cry. So he cracks the front windows to let a little bit of air in. He didn't want to roll them down too far because he didn't want anybody to kidnap her. And then he went into the casino looking for his boss. But this day was the Florida Derby. It was the busiest day of the year for them. His boss was busy. He didn't have the time. So he returned to the car, checked on Veronica. He looked through the window and saw her playing happily with her favorite toy, a stuffed pink bunny with the words, "I love you," across the chest. He went back inside. This time he runs into some friends and they start talking about his move. He places a few bets. All his bets were under $10. He was in a long shot hoping to get some extra money for the trip. So he didn't want to spend any of his money. When all of his race was over, he said goodbye to his friends. He goes out a while longer. The surveillance videotape shows that he was inside for about 2 hours. When he stepped out of the air-conditioned place, he was struck by how much the temperature had changed. It had spiked to 80 degrees. He immediately thought of the baby and broke into a sprint across the parking lot. More than 6 years later, he recalls that fateful day. From a stuffy cedar block meeting room at the correctional institution in Florida. He says, quote, "It was the worst moment of my life." His voice lowers and softens. "When I got there, I could see her through the window," he says, fidgeting with his hands. "She looked like she was sleeping. I thought she was going to be okay." He has spent most of his time since his daughter's death in a prison cell, decorated with photos of her. He expresses deep sorrows and deep sympathy for what he has done. He pled guilty to aggravated manslaughter of a child. He got 20 years. It is one of the largest sentences handed down for this type of crime anywhere in the country. While his arrest originally drew shock and anger because the headlines the media chose were father gambles as baby dies, which was not the scenario, which they believe is the cause of his lengthy sentence. There is a group of defenders on his behalf who are trying to get him released. And he says 100 times through his interview that all he can say is, I forgot. He got caught up and he forgot. There's a YouTube video, very cute, of a 90-year-old woman, 90-year-old woman, Doris Sutton. She wrote and reads South Florida's Children, a call to free prisoner Antonio Belta, the only father in America to ever get 20 years for this type of accidental crime. And I know you guys are sitting there and you're like, Shamri, I would never forget my kid in the car because I'm a parent. I'm a damn good parent. I just told you 4 stories of parents who had a million things going on and their minds were everywhere else, and their minds weren't. Our minds today, right now, are filled with judgment, hate, anger, fucking just craziness at this point in time. So I'm just going to remind everyone, and again, look before you lock. And I want you to think of this. Have you ever bought in a soda, or even your wallet or your purse or your phone, and you're going out to your car is locked, you got to get the keys, your hands are full, so you put an item, keys, soda, pop, whatever, on top of the vehicle. You get your keys, you unlock the vehicle, you get in the vehicle, you leave, you don't remember until you're driving halfway down the road and you need the soda, or you need the phone, or you need the wallet, and you look and you go, fuck, it's not there, I left it, fuck. Same thing. Except for the consequences are higher. Same thing. And out of the 4 stories I told you, only 1 man is imprisoned. And when he is done with his imprisonment, he will most likely be deported back to Peru, and his family saved. He is the only one in his family to come to America. And he is the only man to be treated this way for such a horrible accident to occur. And so if anybody wants to sign his petition, he has a Facebook page that you can go to. And it's just super sad. Like, and that's why I chose this, is I just want to remind everyone that we must look before we lock. We must look before we lock. And I clicked on the death of a child because I was looking for something to do podcast wise. And I was just so sick of the I don't know, the everything. I needed a good crier, and obviously, death of a child, I knew death of a child, I would cry in that. So I picked it. And the only reason I did that is because I'm a horrible crier. I cannot cry on my own. Don't judge me. I need something like super, super fucking sad to get them heartstrings a tugging and make me cry. And so afterward, I did a little bit of research because I said, how long? I've never in my life heard of look before you lock. Never in my life. So I was like, there can't be a bunch of babies dying this way. I mean, how many babies does this happen to? And so I went to the website and got the numbers. And in 1998, there was 39 deaths. In 1999, 32. 2000, 35. 2001, 39. 2002, 31. 2003, 43. 2004, 39. 2005, 47. 2006, 29. 2007, 36. 2008, 43. 09, 33. 2010, 49. 2011, 33. 2012, 34. 2013, 44. 2014, 31. 2015, 24. 2016, 39. 2017, 44. 2018, 53. 2019, 52. So far in 2020, we have 2 deaths so far. And this doesn't happen just because you left them in the vehicle. This happens when you accidentally leave your car unlocked, your kids are outside playing, they get into the vehicle, you don't realize they're in the vehicle, and this happens. This happens when you leave them in the car with the door open or the window down because they fell asleep and you don't want to wake up your baby. And you get busy and caught up doing other things, and you have that moment of, oh fuck, where is little Susie? And tragedy strikes you. I do not personally believe any of these parents thought that their children would pass away this way. They are all still living through the trauma of what happened to their precious children. They all own what happened to their precious children. And they just tell you, like, we honestly would hear about it and think what you think right now. That would never be me. 4 families. So that's 2 parents, a thing. 8, what is that? Couple, I don't know. Like 8, 9, I don't know. Fucking parents, guys. That are telling you. I also said that would never be me. But it was them. And I'm saying that right now. I'm in complete and utter fear that I have a vehicle in my garage. I'm deathly afraid that my oldest one will let the littlest one into the garage. They'll get into the vehicle. I won't know. I'm not very good with stairs yet. I won't be able to get to them in time. Tragedy will strike me. A million things. Like, and with just everything going on, just fucking Christ, just look before you lock is really the main message of today's episode. I don't know how to describe it any other way. And I hope no one takes offense to this. I'm not saying these parents are bad or anything else. I don't believe they are, and I don't believe that father needs to be in prison for an accident. I was able to find pictures of all of these babies, and I will post their precious little pictures, except for Veronica. I wasn't able to find a picture of her, except for there's a picture of her father with a bunch of baby pictures of her, and so that's the picture I will be posting. And so yeah, you guys, just remember, look before you lock. Fucking hashtag it if you need to. Hashtag look before you lock. And another tip on the show that is worth giving is if you do have children, especially babies with you, make sure you have something baby item related in the front of the vehicle. So when you go to grab your phone and you grab a bottle or a sippy, you're like, oh shit, little Susie. Gotta grab little Susie. Okay? If we can do anything in the world right now, let's just bring down child car death. Okay? Let's just do that. Let's try. And on average, this happens to 39 babies a year. So I don't normally ask you guys to like share my videos or my podcast. But just this one, please. Let's just share it. Just so everybody knows that this does happen to everyone and anyone. It doesn't matter. This can happen. And we all need to be vigilant. And remember, if you do see a baby, an animal, locked into a vehicle, I say, don't blame it on me, but I say bust that fucking window. You know? Take it upon yourself to be a fucking hero. And just, God bless everyone. God bless everybody. Everybody try to have a good week. Try. And I'm going to be doing Sam Little for a fan pick on Sunday. So, yeah, fan pick Sunday. Sam Little it is. So follow me on Facebook at It Is What It Is, a true crime podcast. On YouTube at It Is What It Is, a true crime podcast. On Instagram at It Is What It Is pod19, altogether one word, no spacies. On Twitter, It Is What It Is 208, because that's where I'm from. And I am more thankful lately to be from Idaho than any other time. And so just shout out to all the Idahoans. Keep it fucking classy, y'all. And just everybody be safe. And again, fuck, God bless us. And let's hope change is upon us in a good way. So, yeah. I don't know, guys. Just, fuck, I love all of you, man. Just be good. Be good. And I will talk to all of you on Sunday. Bye.